All right, welcome in the Bobby Carpenter Show. Excited to have you joining us here on this awesome, hot, balmy Tuesday in the great state of Ohio. It is warm to say the least. Schlegs, I know that you're down in Jacksonville, but it feels pretty frothy up here in Columbus. Probably feels a little more Florida-esque than maybe it typically would have.
Get
So
out there, guys. Get out there. Sun's out, guns out. Get that tan. What's the UV today?
I don't know. What does that matter? Like, I just put sunscreen
It does
on.
matter. No, you want to get tan. Look at this tan. It's just on there.
Okay, so people talk about the UV index. I'm gonna put sunscreen on regardless, and I'm gonna put probably
Why?
30 or 50 on. So I don't care if I don't even know the numbers on it. It doesn't matter to me because I'm gonna wear it anyway. So if you're gonna wear sunscreen, you're gonna put it on. You're not gonna check the UV index. I mean, are you like that? Doesn't
Nope.
make it matter.
Checking out. I might put the banana oil on. Try to lather that up. Put that on there for a good base of like 35 minutes, and then put on the other stuff. Once you get it, or just go out there and get that deep burn in the first time, and then you cool it down once you start to get really hot.
The
You
thing
put
is,
on.
like, you have like that tan. You have the ability to do that, and so it doesn't matter. You're not going to wear sunscreen regardless. So you
I
finding out
know.
the UV index, it's not going to impact you. Like me,
I
I'm going
know.
to wear sunscreen regardless of what it says. So, you
It's
know,
been a selling point. It's been a selling point, Mike, because my daughter knows like when the best time is. Like, oh, the UV is so good for tanning. Like, I don't even know. So it's just kind of like a joke now. It's a
yeah,
running joke in the house.
exactly. So, I mean, that doesn't matter. Um, a nice little Tuesday here. Happy to be back from Jordan Cornett's golf outing. It was an awesome time. Got to see let's see our buddy Marcus Schlegs. He's doing well. Brady Quinn, Eric Wood was down there, former center of the Bills, played at Louisville. Awesome dude. He used to train with my brother when he was a strength coach down there because he told me, he's like, hey, when I got to the NFL, he's like, one of the guys told me, he goes, don't ever forget why you got here. He's like, so I'd go back and train with Louisville and train with the college dudes. And he's like, as I got older, it'd be like 2 days a week instead of 4. But I go, exactly, man. That's what I always did. You always try to make sure that you're training at the level you did and not getting complacent with where you're at. And so it was a big deal. But it was good seeing some of those guys and having a really good time.
Where was that golf outing located?
NCR in Dayton. So my guy EJ Manuel, who I do
Oh, yeah.
XM with. Yeah, so NCR, really nice course. It's 18 holes, north and south, and I think the south is tougher than the north. So we played 9 on one and 9 on the other, and we kind of switched. So it was pretty awesome. But it was a good time, Schlegs. It was a tough, very tough course, especially I think the south. Very tight greens, a lot of bunkers around there, like
Mm.
hitting into a hallway with everything. Um, hope they took some of my shots, hit a nice little bomb putt one time to let us score. We went 14 under, Schlegs, so a pretty nice day.
That's
Uh,
good.
yeah. Brady won at 15. We got second. We tied for second. So not a terrible day, but it was awesome to see Marcus and just talking to him about the state of college football and where he's at with everything. And
Where is he at?
he's in South Bend.
No, I know, but
And
where is he at? Where is he at with it?
kind of a similar place that Ryan is. He's like, you talk about relationships and developing that trust with everything. He's like, if guys come for the money, they'll leave for the money. We talked a lot about that. And then I was talking to his wife Joanna about it too, and just how rough it was after they lost that Northern Illinois game, and how they were in playoff mode the rest of the year. And and Joanna's was talking to me. She's like, my heart went out for Nina with everything that was going on and the Michigan loss, and just stuff with their family. She's like, you can say stuff about me, you can say stuff about my husband, just like leave the kids alone. And so that's something like coaches' wives can empathize with that at a level that probably not a lot of people can. But just I said, like, how good, how like all toughness and growth usually happens in very uncomfortable times. And so like the discomfort is what leads you to be tougher and to help develop areas that are maybe underdeveloped. And so it's like you look back on it now and you're like, oh, end up working out really well. But in the moment, Schlegs, like after you lose those big games, whether it was Ohio
Yes.
State and it's Oregon or Michigan, if you're Notre Dame, it's after that Northern Illinois loss. Like you sit there and you can feel it. It's like an elephant sitting on your chest, like trying to go out to work the next day and trying to figure out how you got to attack it and what you got to do better.
The thing that probably worked well for Ohio State and even Marcus in that. Marcus being both Marcus and Ryan are younger guys. And I've always said this, like, I mean, players embody the coach, right? We played for Trussell. He wore a sweater vest. The dude was just always even keel all the time. And that's kind of how you played, whether you were up or you were down. It was just kind of always like this. And we razzed on him by the way that they called offensive plays was always like this, you know? But you fed off it. There was no hurry. There was no um, burn everything down, right? It was just consistent, like, we're going to be fine. Here's what we do, the mannerisms of which he had. Marcus and Ryan, probably a little bit more fierier in that way. They're younger. Like, guys see when they come out with a pep in their step. And they have to do it not only for the players, but also for the coaches. Because, I mean, the hardest thing is when you're the head coach, like, you rise and you fall predicated upon the head coach when you're an assistant coach. And so, like, they're fighting for their own jobs. And how do you create that sense of urgency that we got to continue to get better, that we have another opportunity this week, keep it dialed and stay in the lane of 1 week at a time while also developing and having that sense of urgency without losing control and thinking that the sky is falling. Like, that's a really good balancing act that you have to have and navigate. And I think with Marcus' experience, and he actually put it on Joe Klatt, he was kind of talking about us and like the time that he sat behind us and what he had to do to get better. I thought it was a very good clip. But
we might play that.
I know, but he's been through a lot of these situations himself personally as a player and a younger coach that has helped him for this time. I was going to ask you this. Did you guys ever discuss kind of his views on recruiting and vetting the people that are going to be there for the money versus the guys that are there for the development and college, in the brotherhood? Did you ask him about that?
A little bit. I mean, that's kind of, the situation of why guys are coming there and what their emphasis are. Like, he goes, for coaches, our relationship's the same. You got to develop trust. He goes, the money's going to be close to the same for most of the places that, the guys you're recruiting. It's where do they feel the most comfortable at? He goes, so my job is to help build that relationship, build that trust, and have the understanding of, hey, we've got more here. We've got academics. There's other things that do matter. The money's important. He goes, but that's why we have a GM who handles all of that stuff. And then we can focus on building those relationships, which I know is very similar methodology to how they do it ultimately at Ohio State as well, where, you work on that development and closeness first, and then you get to the monetary element later. But if we don't feel comfortable with you, it doesn't matter how much we want to pay you or how good we think you are.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where the whole recruiting class thing is a little bit annoying, because it's all about those guys that you get in the building that fit with what you're trying to do more than it is stars or where they come from or anything like that, because I believe there are a lot of really good coaches out there. I also believe that there's a lot of really poor coaches out there. And that's where you have to lean heavily on. That's why you see Ohio State talking about developed here, that mantra, paying the guys that have been there versus other guys, right? Earlier on. It's just like we value the guys, the meritocracy of having been here, done that, know what we're about, the work that was required. And I just like the way that they're handling it. I'm sure Marcus is handling it in a very similar fashion.
Yeah, they're doing a good job with it, and they're trying to juggle it all. And he was excited to be done, just like I know Ryan and the Ohio State guys. It was the last week of OVs. We'll get into some of those and some of the updates or maybe lack thereof of official visits, but finishing up camp and official visit weekend, that's all finally done. So those coaches get to rest. However, Schlegs, the strength coaches do not. They're in there diving, grinding right now.
Were you there this morning, Bob?
Yeah, Tuesdays are fan bike challenge days, Schlegs. They're lifting. Let me just paint you this image, Schlegs.
I know the image.
They've got two sets of racks that are front and back facing, 7 on each side.
So 14 double-sided, it's 28 racks, just so everybody knows.
And so as you're lifting and they're doing that, the dumbbells to one end, so you're walking in and you can see. And so I'm lifting, and towards the end of the lift, the intern Schlegs start bringing in the fan bikes and like lining them up as they face each other, because it's win or lose or you're going against somebody else. And a lot of times they'll have people that they go against consistently. There's guys that Mick will pick up. They have different teams and things. And today it was interesting. They let the upperclassmen get to choose like who your battler is and win or loser. But as they're bringing them in, I thought it was amazing because it reminded me of like gladiators. They're like marching in the gladiators, and they're sitting in there like ready to battle, and like the fan bikes are just facing across each other, and the guys are looking at them. They're still finishing their lift until Mick hits like the hard triple whistle. Everybody comes in, then it's fan bikes ready to go.
Yeah, as I'm just texting somebody in the group chat. I love the group chat, guys. So I believe they either have 10 sets or 12 sets in there, guys. And again, the block they had 12 sets. So they did 12 rounds today.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Guys, that's a lot. So, and those last anywhere between we always try to stay 4 to 6, A to B plus 2. But those fan bikes, they're normally around 5 to 8. Sometimes they can go for 10. Then you got to run it back when there's a tie on them. And it's about whatever they got as the highest, but you got to maintain it, right? You got to be straining through. There are times where, and it's a little bit objective or subjective from a coach's, because you're there and you're calling out winner or loser. Okay. Like every strength coach has about 2 or 3 bikes, and they're watching these guys and they're like, what's the number? What's the number? Winner. And you're like calling them out, right? They're just over there, just like, water and stuff. But Mick's going through, and then if you got to run it back, but if there's a guy and he just went out there as hard as he possibly could, then just like, he's like, no, lost, right? Like he's out, like disqualified because he didn't finish. That really chaps him. You know what I mean? So, but again, guess what? Nobody cares. And that's kind of the beauty of all the competitive excellence that Mick builds in. And people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. But in today's age, you have to teach competitive excellence. I think it's something that you have to embody 24/7, 365, because you just can't turn the light, flip a light switch on and guys want to start competing. Plus, it goes into the premise of, and I tell this to guys all the time, regardless of the situation, when called upon, you have to respond. That was a big time Urban quote, but they're microdosing those competitive situations throughout the entire year. And if you go to film and you're a wide receiver, I use wide receiver. I don't know why I use it, but I use it. And you go in for 2 plays and you have to block the nickel, or the guy you're competing against for that spot gets 2 plays and they get to block the 185-pound nickel. But the 2 plays that you go in, you somehow have to block the 205-pound strong safety, 210-pound Lathan Ransom that's out there. The only thing the coach is looking at is who won, period. And that's kind of the point, regardless of the situation.
What if the other guy weighs more?
Just win. And so it doesn't matter. Target to winning. Just go. Doesn't matter. Get bigger. And that's kind of the thing, right? It goes back to like they got to know themselves, and you can't beat yourself up on it. There might be a guy, and we used to do just grip holds, man, and I absolutely love that one. And I just said bump it. It was supposed to be half body weight. I said, no, I'm tired of grabbing everybody's body weight. Everybody's looking around. Everybody's just grabbing 150s. Why not? Okay.
And then this one guy goes, who was it? He weighs more than me. You're like, so is the guy you'll have to block.
Exactly. Just, and again, and here's the thing that I've learned, guys, as a coach and as a teacher, there's times to educate before you do, and then there's times to educate after the fact. And sometimes you got to let things play their course because you want to watch with intent how they respond to that situation. And then you can bring them together after the fact and explain the why and what you're looking for. You don't need to press pause and here's what I'm looking, and like give them all these things, because that's not the game. That's not the game. The game just happens, and it happens really, really fast. It's how you respond to it. So as a coach and as an educator, you got to be open not only to the safety of the guys, the progression of the guys, and the fact that they're doing 9 different workouts on your racks because you're training everybody that's different. It's the fact that in those situations, they got to be able to just go. And that's what you want. And then after the fact, you can come back and bring them in and teach them a lesson.
Absolutely.
That's such a fun day, though. The Tuesdays are a good day.
It's good for me to watch. I enjoy it. And watching the shared suffering and sacrifice. I mean, I enjoy that with them, but good Lord. I mean, those guys are looking rough, man. Like some of the guys want to give back their lunch. It does not look like it always feels all that well, but it's part of the beauty of it, Schleigs, is the shared suffering. And
that's going to be camp. Yeah, that's going to be camp. That's how you prepare. Did you sleep? And I always go back to this, guys. anytime you have that competitive excellence in these microdose situations goes back to, did you fully prepare to come in to have a great workout today? What did you do the day before? Right? I mean, it's the summer. I don't even know if they go to summer school, but like, did you go out and like play golf? Did you go and not take care of your body after the workout? Did you not eat properly? Did you stay up late playing video games? Did you wake up late and didn't eat before your training? Like, all of those things matter. Did you prepare yourself to have a great day this day? And then when you have winner loser, regardless of the situation, if you can unequivocally say, hey, I did everything I possibly could to have a great day, I got beat, that's an area I need to work on, and it will 100% correlate to the game of football, I need to go work on it. Guess what? Rather work on it June 24th than, August 31st. Like, that's kind of the point, right? So you have to do those things, and they need to grow up and have some self-introspection in and of themselves. But that's also why you have the position leaders that are also evaluating them. Did that guy give up? Do I want that mentality in my room? Right? If you permit it, you promote it. All of those things, if you just wait for the perfect timing of when you're going to do it, there's never going to be a perfect time to do it. That's why you got to do it on a daily basis.
Absolutely. That's why we have Bill Bender on every week, Schleiks, to help give us some of that national insight with a little local flair with the Bucks as well and everything that's going on. And by the way, it is hot as sweaty balls out there. And so it's good for those guys to get some work in the heat. I'm like, it's time to learn. It's going to be hot in August. Like, let's get used to it right flipping now. So attention, parents and athletes, protect what matters most with Export mouthguards, trusted by professional athletes and designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouthguards are scientifically tested to help absorb those high-impact hits, protecting both your teeth and your brain. Export mouthguards feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including a patented use of carbon fiber. They custom 3D print that bad boy to your grill. That means more protection, better performance, max comfort, and clear communication. So you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Do not take chances with your safety. Export, protect what matters most.
/Bobby, 15% off.
That's exportguards.com/Bobby and save that 15%. Bill Bender, the sporting news, coming up next.
Creative, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
Oh, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we're welcomed by our guy, Mr. William Bender.
Richard.
There you go.
Look at him. Look at that guy.
Every week. Oh, we got a different backdrop, Bill. We someplace new this week or just a home renovation?
Oh, I stole my wife's office. I told you yesterday on Morning Juice, she's in Phoenix for work for a couple days. And I don't know how many times you guys have had the kids alone. I was making the joke today that you'll have times where I literally call a timeout and bring everybody in, let's go. This is what we need to do over the next hour. Keeping the house running that way. But yeah, so I stole her office. It's a little cooler in here.
Hey, let me ask you this question. So wife's gone, you steal her office. It's actually a 2-part question. Does she have a better chair in her office than you do? Because that's normally how it goes. And 2, don't you find it like in the summer when the kids are just home, it's like you feel a little bit of this responsibility to keep them busy, make them active, engaged. Like, it's hard to work from home when they're home in the summer because they're just always constantly asking you questions, doing stuff. How do you navigate those waters, Richard?
Well, I think, obviously Grant, he's has morning lift now at St. Charles. So
Right.
That's easy. I mean, he's at that high school age where routine becomes part of it. And then, Bella, we have to keep her busy as well. And she is that. I think the big thing is just getting them off the phone, do something around the house instead of being on your phone and do those kind of things. So, one of Grant's friends, actually, they were talking about, he mowed 4 lawns, kids still do that, by the way, and cleared like $150 over the weekend.
Love that.
Yeah, good for him. I was like, good for him. Maybe we need to do that. But like you guys said, it's really hot today. That's one with the youth sports practices. They will practice, but they'll practice responsibly today for sure.
So speaking of the heat, we've talked a little bit about this, the moving up of the weekends to week 0, and the heat has been the main thing for the folks in the South, for not wanting to do that. I mean, do you feel like that's something that will inevitably get done here, Bill, within maybe not this season, but obviously, but maybe in the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to push the season up, and high school pushed the season up, and Schlegs. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Texas high school calendar, but I would assume when you played in that area, wasn't the first 2 weeks of that season pretty hot?
Oh yeah.
I think you've got to move the calendar up a couple weeks, or at least 1 week. Make week 0 week 1. It gives you an extra week too, where you're not in the NFL's way. If you need to move some of those southern locations, the game to the evening when it is a little bit cooler, though in fairness, it was pretty hot here at 9:00 last night. But I think they're practicing in it. So what's the difference between 7 days? And you can make the argument right now that it could be hotter in Ohio in June in some ways than it might be in August. We just don't know. You guys know that from living here.
Hey, I'm going to ask you this. So the House settlement, they're talking about the 105. Can you kind of break that down a little bit more, about the roster cap of 105? Is it going to happen this year? They were talking about if people opted in, then they get certain benefits before making them. Can you kind of run everybody down on where we are currently with the roster limits, how it's going to look this year? I was on Morning Juice today. You were on there yesterday. Bob was talking about walk-ons having 16-inch necks, which is absolutely, like, that honestly needs to be a prerequisite. Like, you can't join the team unless you at least have a 17-inch neck. But can you just talk a little bit about how that roster limit is going to impact this year versus 2026?
Well, I think obviously it will impact walk-ons. I think that's one. And then, the big question I have is what happens if you get into spring practice, you lose 2 or 3 guys inevitably. And I guess you don't hear about it as much in college, 2 or 3 guys, whatever, somebody tears an ACL in the spring game, and a couple guys get hurt. And then you get into fall practice, and that does happen every year where you have a couple guys get hurt. And then all of a sudden you're down 5 guys. This isn't the NFL where you can replace those 5 guys. And I think Matt Rule was talking about that at Big Ten Media Day last year. If we have 3 guys go down in the spring, does that count against our 105? That's an unanswered question that we don't have. So
that's a good point.
And I think that's something to keep in mind moving forward, that that's how it's different than NFL. And the walk-on factor, to me, you got to have walk-ons in college football. It's just part of the story, and I've told you guys before, I lived with a couple in college. You see what they go through, and you see how important they are, not just to MAC football programs, but to the Big Ten and everywhere else.
Isn't that the connectivity, though, Bill, of what makes college different than professional sports? Is that you have people that aren't receiving any benefits other than their own utility and enjoyment from going out and working and playing. They're paying to go to school there, but to me, that's the connective tissue that helps kind of unite the athlete to the normal student population.
Oh, I mean, even at Ohio State, you'll see the kid from, Dublin Kaufman, the kid from Grove City that has wanted to play for Ohio State his entire life, and they end up going there. And I think every Power 4 program probably has a story like that. I bet if you look at Alabama's roster right now, you'll find a couple kids from that Tuscaloosa area that play for Alabama, and it means more there. It goes back to I think Lou Holtz said it, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but he said, what did he say? You want 5 guys that are the best players in the country and 5 guys that would die to play for Notre Dame. It was something like that. And I think, Coach Tressel, Coach Meyer, Coach Day have all been in tune with that. As much as Ohio State probably recruits, you guys might disagree. I think they recruit a little more national than they did when you guys were there. Yeah. Jim Tressel had a high concentration of Ohio guys on the team, but even if it's not like that they're ignoring Ohio, though. It's a huge part of the program, having kids especially from around this area.
I'm going to ask you this. So you brought up a great point. So NFL, you have the PUP list, you have the IR injury reserve list. When are I guess it goes back, Richard, to who is managing all of this to say that this is the rule. Because if you do have somebody, dadgummit, last year we were as a running back, really good young man, not the greatest running back of all time, earned a scholarship, got hurt. Does that should not count against your active 105 because they're not active, and then we can replace them, and that's going to go back into how did you divvy up that money if it does happen in spring to go get somebody in the portal to pay somebody, right, a buyout of somebody else to come to your team, because you do have to have bodies. You have to have a certain amount of bodies in the quarterback room. You have to have a certain amount of bodies in the running back room. But who's going to make ultimately this decision as to what you do with that 105?
Well, I mean, that's the question that hasn't been answered yet. And
I know. Is that a NCAA? Is that a college football playoff like governing body? I mean, it's obviously not in the House settlement as to what that is. So who do you think is going to make that decision?
Inevitably, probably the NCAA. And then does it become, is there a clarification from the conferences? I'm sure the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12 will have something to say about that, And then the other part is, what do you do with roster management? Okay, so some of the MAC schools, for example, you lose 10 to 15 guys. What happens then to the portal? You get to replace those guys. Does that count to your 105? So I think of all the things in that House settlement, it's weird. We're not really talking about the money end of it, which I think we all assume that's going to be a process and kind of a TBD to me. But that roster is more important to the coaches. And the roster management end of college football has changed so much in 4 years that you're seeing teams obviously hire the GMs and the coaches taking on more of a CEO role than anything. And I'm sure when you guys talk to Coach Day or if you talk to other coaches around college football, they're going to say they probably don't coach football as much as they'd like to. And I don't see that changing over the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you get into it. The problem is, Bill, the higher up you get and the more responsibilities you have, the less you get to actually do the thing that you loved about the sport in general. We're going to take, or whatever job that is, really. We're going to take a quick break here. We got more with Bill Bender, the Sporting News, coming up next. All right, back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. And if you're watching, please like, subscribe, leave your comments, questions, all the stuff. We love to connect with you. And Bill does a great job over at the Sporting News, and they always have all their summer content that's working and they've got coming out. And they're working on, I believe, Bill, you said the bowl game matchups for what the predictive measures. So where teams will finish basically and who they would be playing in the subsequent bowl game. How far are we along the way with that? And how has this been tougher or easier than in past and previous years?
It was easier this year because I did it last year. So it was that first year of doing the 12 team. Now, one thing, I am guilty of making bowl projections and bowl predictions pretty chalky. And they're going to come out later this week and they're going to be very chalky as usual. Because, I mean, the way I justify that is you make your top 25. Those are the teams that you think are going to get in the playoff. So, there's a couple exceptions in there. And I think one of the things I found, Bobby, was what the difference between this year's field and last year's field and why we're having all this 12 and 16 talk is I could very easily see this year the SEC gets 4 teams, the Big Ten gets 3, which is the flip of last year. If that second ACC team gets in there and then Notre Dame gets in there, then the Big Ten or the SEC is not getting 4 teams. And that's why we have to lead this push to get to 16 so the Big Ten and the SEC can get all of their playoff caliber teams in the playoff. And I think that could happen to the Big Ten this year. I could see, for example, and without spoiling too much, I mean, I could see Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon getting in, or whoever that third place team is, and then an Illinois or a Michigan or even an Indiana getting locked out, and the SEC getting there for this year. So It's a process as usual. The playoffs aren't the hard part though. It's figuring out who's going to the Cure Bowl and who's going to the
The Pop-Tart Bowl.
The Pac-12 still has tie-ins to like 6 bowls. So that part's the hard part, filling that part of the puzzle out.
And that sounds like a terrible part to fill out because nobody cares. Hey, here's one question I got for you, and they threw this up in the chat because I love our chat. It's super frothy. One of the question was who will surprise you the most at the beginning of fall camp? I'm just going to say who's going to surprise us the most during fall camp after their time in the strength and conditioning program. But it's more along the lines. I'm going to say this outside of like whoever the quarterback is. Who do you think needs to step up the most for Ohio State to have success this season?
The running back room's interesting because you don't have, what they had last year, which was arguably the best 1-2 punch, probably the best 1-2 punch in the country with Travion and Quinshawn, who will be very busy this year. So is it Peoples? Is it I'm blanking Donaldson? Donaldson. I got it. Now Donaldson,
West Virginia.
Yeah, so CJ Donaldson, a couple years ago, I was watching them play Penn State, and he impressed me so much in that game. They didn't win the game, but he was really hitting it. And he was talking about, I was in the Woody a couple months ago, he was talking about the competition factor right away. So, those running backs, who's going to be those guys that kind of sets up everything else in the offense? Because we know Ohio State has elite receivers, and we know it doesn't matter if it's Julian or somebody else at quarterback. I think they're fine there. But that running back position, you almost took for granted Quinshawn and Travion last year. And then you're like, man, both of those guys were day 2 backs. And I bet you both of them carve out a nice role in the NFL this year.
So you can talk about putting together all of your picks, and it's a lot very chalky, the usual suspects up there. The 12 team, the playoff expansion was supposed to help kind of flatten college football, more people getting at bats. Hopefully that would disperse the talent. I think the portal and NIL has probably helped that as well. So teams just can't hoard talent and stack it, 2 and 3 lines deep. But do you feel like it's going to end up being a lot of the same characters that we see in this 12-team playoff and then 16 from what we saw the first season?
Well, I don't want to – I'll spoil this part too. So 8 of the 12 teams I have in the playoff were in the playoff last year. So I think there is going to be a little bit of usual suspects to it. I mean, how could you – I think Ohio State becomes the version of Duke or Kansas in the college basketball tournament where you can kind of count on them being a 1 or 2. Georgia, Texas, Penn State, and, even down to Notre Dame, because Notre Dame, if they continue to have success, they'll be a playoff regular the way that their schedule's set up. Now, they won't get that first round bye, but they definitely will get in the playoff a lot. And to answer Joe's question in the chat, the thing I was saying about the bowl projections, the Pac-12 still technically has ties to bowl games. So, for example, USC is a Big Ten team, but they could go to a Pac-12 tied-in bowl game, at least for one more year. So you could see USC in the Alamo Bowl. It's part of the reason why BYU and Colorado played each other in the Alamo Bowl last year, despite being Big 12 teams. So whenever I get an email, guys, about you messed this bowl tie-in up, I'm like, I'm not Goodwill Hunting, man. Some of these like tie-ins, you have to have a board to see the 17 things that need to happen. So it is really interesting trying to fill those out. I enjoy it, but I'm sadistic in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Marcus Freeman about this, and it seems, Bill, like this is the most. I mean, I would say Brian Kelly had them in a pretty good spot, but it seems like Marcus has them. You've mentioned a lot how he's made them likable. It seems like they've been likable in recruiting, and this has been like the highest caliber of talent to where this is the first time we haven't said, well, Notre Dame's like the 5th or 6th best team in the country, but I don't know that they could beat the top 4. It seems like now that they might be mixing it up a little bit enough to where, yeah, they're somewhere in that 3 to 5 range, but there isn't some sort of plateau or cliff that they have to try to climb to be able to compete with everybody else.
Well, last year the title game was the first time in their playoff appearances where I thought they could compete. And that's a compliment both to Ohio State because I thought Notre Dame had raised their talent level. Now Ohio State came in and took care of that game pretty early. I know Notre Dame fought back in the fourth quarter and it wasn't a blowout, but I felt like Notre Dame's talent was good enough to compete. Whereas in past years, I was like, no, Alabama's going to beat them and Clemson's going to beat them. And that's what happened. So I think the key will continue to be on the recruiting side. Can Marcus Freeman keep that momentum going? As far as Notre Dame being likable, yes, they are now. And Marcus is a huge reason why. He's charismatic. He recruits well. I think he's relatable to, the younger generation of college football fan. There's no doubt about that. Like I've made this joke on here before, the wives like him because he's a good looking dude. So, you have wives sitting around watching the game, and I can say that on here, right?
Look at that guy. Look at that guy.
Yeah.
He's a handsome dude.
He's in shape. He's in shape. But here's where the drawback could happen. And I was thinking about that with the playoff projections. The more times Notre Dame gets in with the format and not being in a schedule or not being in a conference, then SEC fans and Big Ten fans are going to continue to get mad. That fourth Big Ten team that doesn't get in. Why is Notre Dame in ahead of us? That fourth SEC team that doesn't get in. And there was a little bit of blowback last year because they did lose to Northern Illinois. That was probably their worst loss under Marcus, but the way that they came back and finished 11-1, they deserve to be in. So I think that's the only possible blowback that could come over Notre Dame over the next few years.
You said two getting in from the ACC potentially. Who's your second besides Clemson?
I think there's a tremendous opportunity for Miami this year. But I know we say it every year, and I know we're dying to say the U is back and bust out all those starter hats we had in the 90s. But I think Carson Beck has an opportunity. Their schedule set up that they could be very good this year. And I think the ACC is a conference. If it's not Miami, it could be SMU. If it's not SMU, it could, well, I don't think North Carolina is quite ready for that, but you get what I'm saying. I think they're the conference that logically could put two teams in the playoff on a regular basis, much like they did last year.
All right, I'll leave you with this, Bill. Since we talked about Miami always being in that conversation, not being able to get it done. If you had to put all of your faith in a late game situation being managed correctly, Mario Cristobal, James Franklin, who are we leaning to?
Well, can I know who they're playing? Because if it's James Franklin against an upset bid and they need a fourth down, much like I'll give him the Minnesota game.
Yeah, they faked the punt.
Right. So I'm probably taking James Franklin because that game was one that they could have choked away, and they did win. And that stat I keep pointing out all off season that they're 29-0 against unranked teams, but 5-8 against ranked teams the last 3 years. And so I'm probably taking James Franklin. I still look at that Miami Georgia Tech game, and I need one more year. It's got one more year of punishment because that was as bad a late game situation as you could ever have.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate the time, sir. Love the conversations. Try to keep the house in order until your lovely wife gets back, and hopefully we don't see like smoke bellowing out of your neck of the woods.
Well, I'm glad that Pat caught that there is a Taylor Swift poster behind me. I was trying to block it with my head, but I've been caught, and don't make fun of me too much. I'll see you guys next week.
All right, thanks.
See you, Richard.
Oh, it's our guy, Bill Bender.
18 inches around.
Oh, yeah, he's the best. Does a great job. And I wanted to get him with that last question there to see his thoughts. I want to tell you about our friends over at Backer. That's bckr.com. The premium Buckeye gear that you love. I've been wearing the rain jacket, the windbreaker. It's a little warm for both of those now, but hey, I'm sure the rain will be back soon. It's premium Buckeye gear at a premium Buckeye price. It's BCKR. That's backer.com. You order directly from them. Portion of the proceeds goes back to the Ohio State student athletes. It's the high-end gear that you use for fishing, golfing, hunting, whatever it is. It's there. They've got all the features you want. So go check them out at backer.com, bckr.com, and use promo code all caps Bobby, BOBBY, at checkout for free expedited shipping. Again, that's Backer, bckr.com. Headlines coming up next.
Create it, experience, results. That's what drives growth. That's what builds brands. That's Lake Spur Marketing, a full-service agency built on trust, strategy, and performance, not fluff. From bold strategies to flawless execution, every campaign is rooted in smart planning and driven by clear goals. We don't chase clicks. We build partnerships. We show up, dig in, and deliver every single time. Lake Spur Marketing. The proof is in our partners.
Welcome back in to the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now we get our headlines brought to you by our friends over at Lake Spur Marketing, full-service ad agency built on trust, on strategy, on performance, the 3 pillars of success. The Lake Spur team is going to shield you and your team from the outside noise, cold calls, all the stuff you don't want to do, and they're going to let you do what you do best, which is run your business. They have the experience you want with over 100 combined years in marketing. Lake Spur eliminates waste and delivers on budget. They don't chase clicks. They help build those partnerships. Lake Spur Marketing, the proof is in the partners. All right, Schleiks. Buckeyes, Ohio State, a Nike school.
Ooh, Nike.
You knows that. They've been a Nike school ever since I can remember, at least going back 30 years. And they're signing Chris Henry Jr. He's going to come and play for the Ohio State Buckeyes, a receiver. I believe he'll be able to make that official in December. Excited to have him in here. Schleggs, there's a little ad that we saw come across the social media realm. Pat, if you want to throw that up there, and we'll take a little peek here at Chris Henry. Oh, what's going on?
I like it, though. I can see it because I've already watched it.
Yeah. Is there sound to it? Oh.
Look at that guy. Look at that guy. Honestly, man, he looks good. Like he's put on some weight.
Yeah. Schleggs, have you ever thought about wearing a robe and cleats?
No, I have a robe. My wife bought me a robe. Was it an UGG robe, Steph? I kind of like it. Worn it with flip-flops and Crocs. Never thought about
Cleats?
Not rocking it with cleats. But you never know if you got to get somewhere fast. Why not? I mean, he's prepared, right? Preparation stops when the foot hits the ball. So
here's what I'm curious about. I wonder what the length of this deal looks like, how it looks. I don't know if he'll be permitted to wear Adidas cleats in the games. I don't think that that'll be the case. He can wear Adidas stuff doing his interviews and different things, I think, when he gets into his street clothes. I'm just curious how this is going to work. And this is kind of the first time, Schleiks, where we've seen someone get a really big national apparel deal that's in direct conflict with your school and what they are rocking.
Well, I think that probably goes into NIL. And that's a great question, Bob. Where if you sign on the dotted line with Ohio State that is a Nike school, is it required that they all wear Nike? Do they get more NIL money? If you're allowed to shop their, help them create revenue for themselves, name, image, and likeness, and another brand wants to utilize their services, why not? The hardest thing with that, though, when you think about it is, well, we give all this money to Ohio State and our brand is everywhere. It's on the jersey, but it's not on the cleats. Like maybe there are certain things that you can do. It's the same thing in the NFL. Back in the day, Bob, remember they were at Reebok and it was like you wear a Reebok, but we could wear our shoes. But I remember even in the Nike deals, like in the Nike deal, you weren't allowed to spat unless it was like for injury purposes and like it had to be like validated that it could. A lot of people went to Under Armour, like AJ was an Under Armour guy because he liked to spat his cleats and probably had a little bit better deal. But still, like there were things that you can do in other cleats that you couldn't do in others. So I'm interested to see how this works because if you think about it from a brand perspective, Nike, Ohio State, you have some of the best talent that's out there, the most followed people that are out there. We want them wearing our shoes, but then they can individually go out and get their own deals. Like, why wouldn't you want to penetrate that market? Right, with their players? I don't know. Maybe that's a good advantage. Ross, like, what do you think?
There's stuff in those contracts. The devil is in the details, Schleggs.
For sure.
So
you got to say it. It's like you can't hold me, to wearing only Nike when I could potentially get more revenue from Adidas in this aspect.
So there's some great questions that are coming here in the chat. We're going to answer all those, Schleggs.
That's really had a contract before I signed with.
Hold on. We're going to answer all of those in our tailgate talk, which is what we do. We answer your questions coming up next. Welcome into our tailgate talking slugs. I haven't really read all the chat stuff since we got on the Taylor Swift stuff, and the combining of Swift and Richard Bender together. And
he's a doctor.
What's his name?
I put a doctor before, like Dr. Dick Swift. Like that one. That's a power name.
That's a real power name. That's the stuff we have going on. And so, where was that question? That was sorry, I've been incepted. Oh, does this prevent him? Chris, coming from Chris Kersey here, does this prevent him from participating in non-Adidas camps because they like the Nike ID camps and stuff? It's a great question, Chris. I mean, they may want him going there, and I think if you go to the Nike camps, you can wear your own shoes. Maybe I don't think they force you to wear Nike. That stuff was all after my time, so I'll have to do a little research into that and see how all that's set up. But it's a pretty good question, and then how that'll work, obviously, when he gets to Ohio State and what that's going to look like. There's a lot of ambiguity because he signed that deal beforehand, and I don't think you would be able to sign the deal. The other thing is, like, there aren't a ton of Adidas schools out there. I believe Tennessee is going back to Adidas, if I'm not mistaken, Schlags.
They are a $200 million deal. We talked about it right here on the Bobby Carpenter show.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame has been Adidas in the past. I don't know if they were
Under Armour now.
They're Under Armour right now. Yeah, so there's a lot of different stuff that's out there with all that. See if we have any other questions, Slice. Is there any other good stuff that you saw rolling around in here, or was it just all
we were talking about guys. We were talking about guys. Why don't you go ahead and put up that 10 breakout candidates, Pat? Put out that 10 breakout candidates. And the reason I brought that up in the chat, well, somebody did, like, who do you expect to come at a camp? And I saw this the other day on the IG machine, top 10 candidate breakouts. And Julian Sainz up there. We talked about DJ Lagway a long time ago about why Napier still retained his job, and it's the relationships. And now in college football, it's not just your coaching staff, and it's also the contracts of your coaching staff, but it's also the recruitment of your players and being able to hop into a portal. And that was important for him. Julian Sainz up there, obviously projected to be the starting quarterback. There's still a battle. All right, so that's the fact. Edric Houston popped on this list. And, I'm looking at this.
They need him and K-Mac have to be really good this year for this.
They really do. They really do. And the other guys that step up, I think they're the two guys that we're kind of betting on to be the starters. Like K-Mac at a nose or a one technique. Edric at a three. Remember, Edric came in as a defensive end, already had a really big frame. I was fortunate enough to work with him for 6 months. A lot of growth transpired over the time. I haven't been there for a year. A lot of growth, a lot of girth. The biggest thing is when you have somebody coming in that has the potential that Edric has, and I put this in the chat, it's just his belief in himself that he is that guy. And that's where, when you're not getting a ton of snaps and you do have the veterans that are there that are playing at a really high level, you can't take that for granted. And all of a sudden, like, boom, I got to step in and show out, and it's my time. It's why it's so imperative that they seize those moments to not only watch them, but practice like them during the season so that when is their opportunity, they can be ready. And that starts with spring ball. Now it goes through summer conditioning going into fall camp. But it's also why those hard conversations and why summer conditioning is so important, because you're able to evaluate that guy now, good on good. Where does he lack? Here's where you need to improve. We have X amount of months to get ready. Not a lot of time, but we can. And here we got to go. It's time to, every time I go out, I got to show out Juicy J style. And I hope that Edric is up for that task, him and K-Mac both. I see a lot of potential. We're going to need him to play a lot of snaps because we also got to develop the depth that's behind them. And I'm hoping that, and I think Larry Johnson is up to that task. And we've seen it last year, even with the offensive line. It's amazing how last year at this time we were talking about our offensive line so much. And right now we don't talk about it because we saw what they were able to do with 9, 10 different guys and still win a national championship. It's kind of like it's a forgotten thing that transpired. We still have guys that were replacing 3 seniors on that offensive line, right? Well, actually 4, because you got Seth, you got Donnie, you got Josh, and you got Josh. So you're really technically replacing 4 of the 5 starters going into the season, but you feel kind of confident with them because they all got meaningful live bullets last year and did a hell of a job.
All right, final one. Bradley D. Bob,
Ooh.
does Sayin look bigger to you? Yeah, he does. I mean, if you're spending time with Mick, it's not just bigger, it's like proportionally, and like that's what I'm talking. Like, you watch guys like just how they're developed, like their physical stature, shoulders, like chest, how they carry themselves. Like you can see the physical maturation that's happened in his body. Some of it's happening because he's aging, and then the bigger chunk of it is the fact that he's in a program with Mick, and they're getting after it, and it's tough. I mean, I looked at like what Lincoln did when he came in. He was a skinny guy that played 3 sports, was a great athlete. And then you look at him now after 3 years. And so this incremental growth that ultimately occurs is happening. And so it's going to continue to grow. He's got another, 5 weeks before they start the season. So this is going to be a critical time, but he looks to be well on his way. All right, we're going way too long. We got Schlegs wrapping up the show with his parting thoughts in 30 seconds. Oh, goodness. We got a Walter Solchek drop in the chat as well. Schlegs, 30 seconds here before you get out.
Hey, 30 seconds.
Steph said that's way too much time for you.
I know. So, hey, here's the thing. I'm just going to challenge everybody. I talked about it on Morning Juice today. I went to Miami Airport. Here's my biggest thing. Listen, wherever you go, take in some of the local flair. Okay, I had a key lime pie. It was Cuban made. Really, it was delicious. I drank a Cuban cerveza. Okay, it was delicious. Like, go out there, man. Expand your palate and have some local flair. It'll do you some good. Jamaica, drink Jamaican beer, right? I don't know if they have Haiti beer, but whatever.
Haitian beer, I think is what you
Haitian beer, yeah, no problem. Just, hey, enjoy some of the local flair. Okay, that's it. There you go. Poop David Copperfield.
People are yelling coconut in the chat. I don't know what that means.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'm not. I've got to actually monitor the show. You're the one that just reads the chat the whole time.
No, I'm not getting a Cuban sandwich. I've already had a Cuban sandwich. I wanted some key lime pie because I saw it in the deal, old school style, and I put extra whipped cream all over that thing. And I got a cerveza hatua, and I don't even know what that means. The little Cuban girl back there was just giggling at me because I'm this old man at 10 o'clock at night drinking a beer and eating key lime pie in the Miami airport, charges to win it.
Yeah, what's tougher than that? All right, that's it for today's show. We'll see you tomorrow.